Hello, Maya. How are you?
Oh, hi, like I'm doing fine, Miss Savage.
Well, good. Great.
Like, I'm sorry, like, how's your nephew?
Well, he's just yesterday we finally got a really good report where he's actually being weaned from some of the harder sedation because he's been completely under sedation except when they did something called sedation vacations, and they would here, I can turn this on. You'll see how absolutely pitiful I look. Anyway, it's been a challenge. I've got a family situation in Birmingham, and then my nephew and his parents in
Well, I understand.
O'Shea, Mississippi. So it's been a challenge trying to get through this semester. I'll tell you what. I need to just go ahead and be retired, which I believe I may do.
Well, yeah, like it makes sense because I mean, yeah, ever since the COVID, it's been a huge hassle on all of us.
Oh yeah, absolutely it has. I mean, there's nobody that's been untouched and challenged by, this year. Okay. Now,
And
I know I told one of my classes that we would not have any more Zooms, and that I would one of them, I said, I would be on Zoom if you had questions. So I'm not sure that I did that with this class. I
I
didn't.
don't think that was us because in our last email, when you told us about your family situation, you said that there would be no quiz that our Explore social work assignment would be our final exam.
Exactly. Thank you. Okay. Okay. And I discovered something that I need to finish up with. And
yeah, and we were also like doing notes about child welfare,
right.
all that on the Microsoft Word. We haven't finished that.
Right, exactly. And it just, when everything kind of went haywire all at once.
Yeah.
one thing on top of something else that was already going on, I was managing with, but that's how we learn about crisis theory and to work with crises situations. And that is that when you have one ongoing crisis that is going to endure for a while, and then you have a sudden crisis on top of that, it really exhausts your emotional resources. And even if you think you cope well, often what happens with folks that we interview with in a crisis setting or doing crisis counseling, even if we're just seeing someone on an outpatient basis, you may find yourself dealing with a crisis that your client's experiencing. And so you have to be aware of those things. That's part of what going through the curriculum is about, is teaching you about interviewing, how to interview in ways that are appropriate. You really get more of that clinical stuff, however, on the master's level, where you learn specifically about mental health issues that clients may experience in advanced practice, and that's where you're most likely going to experience some of the crisis counseling, in-depth counseling. But let me see if I can see myself here. I think
okay. And just a quick question, that Explore social work, like is that the same link that you showed us about different areas of social work, like being a medical social worker? That's just the same link?
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there I am. Oh, looking pitiful. Anyway. Telling you, worn out. I've driven from a flu from Birmingham to where my family crisis is here, that's ongoing, and then flew on an emergent basis to Mississippi, Gulf Coast, Goshen, and my husband came and picked me up, drove to Marion so I could change out clothes, and then I drove yesterday. No, it's today, Tuesday. I've lost track of days. It's Thursday, Wednesday. I drove here yesterday.
Uh-huh.
So it's been, I don't even know how many miles that's been back and forth. So anyway, yeah. So what was your original question? I got off telling you about.
Oh yeah, like you already answered it. I asked about that explore social work that's going to be our final. Is basically that same link that's about different people, the different fields of social work, like being a medical social worker
Right.
or
That's it. And
health, etc.
Great. And that's where I got off talking about crises. That's how I ended up. See, that's what happens. I'm a living example of what happens when you have someone, and even though crisis responses or appropriate crisis responses are something that we do and address in resolving those or teaching someone to manage those in a counseling setting, is something we do on the master's level, the advanced practice level. However, even on the undergraduate level, going in as a registered social worker, for example, with your 4-year degree in social work, you end up with situations where you may not do the counseling. You have to refer that to an advanced practitioner, social work practitioner, but you may actually have to know how to respond to that person to even have them hear what you're saying. Say, for example, you're doing child welfare and you've gone to work for them straight out of school as an RSW, and you do a home visit. And in the home visit, you don't do counseling per se, unless you're assigned to an advanced unit like home builders unit. And in those cases, you might do some advanced stuff, because usually those are LCSWs that are in those intensive home-based stuff. But say you're an RSW, you're a new worker, your job is just to take calls. We'll talk a little bit about child welfare, take calls on the crisis line, or to do the investigation. Certainly those would be crisis situations, but you would not do the counseling that you would do on the advanced level, you see. Or if you're managing that case to make sure that resources are lined up for a particular situation, a child removed, placed in foster care, for example, or a parent or two parents trying to do what they need to do to keep their home safe for their kid, not removing the child in that case, but just keeping them safe. So in that case, knowing how to respond to the presentation of someone in crisis, as opposed to helping them resolve and cope with their crisis, or you still have to know the same basic stuff, which is a person who is in crisis. If you say you're working in a psychiatric hospital, a psychiatric psychiatric outpatient clinic. There we go. So you're working in or you're doing private practice as an advanced practitioner. Okay, you would be doing some of the similar things that as a professional counseling arrangement as a social worker, be doing the same things that you would do in a psychiatric hospital or a psychiatric mental health clinic. Okay. But you still have to know and recognize someone who is in crisis. Someone in crisis, and particularly if they're overwhelmed with crisis, may not be able, as I am struggling to keep up with my classes, to get stuff, graded and get stuff, done. And then once that happened with my nephew, that immediate medical crisis, my word, that was all I could handle, and that happens. You see that, or you may see someone who is in crisis and they
hide it.
Are not, pardon?
I was going to say that, like, when people are in crisis or they're having problems, they tend to hide it.
Yes.
So it won't be that obvious.
Right. Yes. So, but people have different responses, and sometimes they won't know they're in crisis or cannot manage multiple crises, one on top of another. Say, for example, all of y'all dealing with trying to get your semesters wrapped up. That's not necessarily a crisis unless, you're dealing with somebody like me at the end of the semester, getting done what you need to get done. But hopefully that's not a crisis for y'all in this class, because I've given you the options for a final assignment, not an exam, but an assignment, right?
Mhm.
So we're going to talk about that. But the point of knowing about responding to someone in crisis is, number one, you cannot ask them lots of questions. You just get what you basically necessarily need to know about why they're in crisis. Let's take as an example, as I started with, all of y'all who are struggling with ending up the semester. You may be working too. You may have something happen in your family, or maybe we have a catastrophic event, a weather event, and we're all, suddenly in crisis, the whole state, like we were in Hurricane Katrina and Rita back in 2000, what was it, 2005, I believe. So, and some of y'all, may not, you may only have been children, or I don't know, let's see, 2005, you would have been, some of you were born in 2005, you would be 16 now. So most of y'all should be aware, right? Okay, so even if you were an infant or young or a toddler or in grade school, you probably were aware that your family was displaced. That's a crisis. So your parents then, if you were a child and your parents were going through that, then you would be feeling that upset too. You would be feeling that anxiety, really peaked anxiety, because your parents, as well as you, depending on your age, would be experiencing that too, right? So when that happens and someone is in a crisis, therefore, whatever is the cause, the more crises you have that occur at one time, particularly, or occur suddenly and are catastrophic, as say, for example, the unusualness of my nephew with the stroke at 25, that is highly concerning. We were worried about dying, right? So, thank the Lord and all the prayers. And, my approach, for example, was not to hide or compartmentalize. That's what Maya's talking about, y'all, is that people will not tell you. Had I not made y'all aware, y'all probably wouldn't have a clue and just thought I was worst instructor in the entire world, because just dropped off the map, if I was not able to manage multiple crises and did so only by compartmentalizing or hiding, not telling what's going on, not seeking assistance, thinking that you're going to be able to manage it, and then ultimately may have an emotional breakdown, right? And it may manifest in lots of different ways. It may manifest in psychiatric hospitalization, or it may simply manifest as it's manifesting for me, as your example right now, or it may manifest as, panic attacks, or separations.
Nervous.
Go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. I
Yeah.
was just gonna say a nervous breakdown.
Yes, a nervous breakdown. Yes, hospitalization oftentimes required for a nervous breakdown. Certainly a visit to a physician for medication and treatment to manage. So there are lots of ways that crises manifest, in short, and the way that we respond to them, how we are treated if they are severe responses that an individual has. Some people don't have, and I'm not saying I've got a lot of resilience. Sometimes I'm wondering lately, but some individuals are born with more resilience, capacity for resilience to manage crises than do others. Some people have the resilience to be able to be completely calm and resolved and do what they got to do. And then after the fact, will have their breakdown, emotional breakdown. Some people are resilient all the way through, right? And some people, in that case, the latter case, have minimal emotional struggling with the events. Not that they have none, because nobody is that powerful over their emotions, right? Especially when it comes to loss or threat to someone that's important to you. correct? That's the greatest threat of all. Again, in short, we have talked about what happens when you are in a psychiatric setting. We're going to relate it now to a setting. And your setting is to maybe do case management. An RSW, 4-year degree in social work, can do case management, but you're not going to do counseling. Case management means you go to the home, you check to see that they're following the instructions of the counselor and or physician, taking medications depending on why the person is receiving in-home visits by a case manager. You make sure that any resources that they have are established and are connected for them and delivered and available, whether that's home visitation by someone else for home health issues, in addition to what you're doing psychiatric with the psychiatric services as case management. So your setting then that we're talking about with this kind of chatting that we started out with today, with Maya being first one, is psychiatric setting. We talked about it as direct practice, right? Because you're working one-on-one in every example I've talked to you about. I've given you a situation, crises, that clients who receive psychiatric treatment can receive, or ongoing treatment for management of life circumstances that cause depression, maybe situational depression, to long-term mental illness. So those are direct practice methods. An administrator in a psychiatric setting might be the director of or owner of that particular service, that psychiatric clinic that is what we call would be in the corporate sector, because you have to meet your debts and make a little profit so you can pay yourself decently, right? But if you're working for a hospital or a public mental health clinic or a private mental health clinic, could be nonprofit, could be for profit. Okay, no matter what your setting, your field of practice, psychiatric or mental health, and your settings could be a private agency or a public agency. Public agencies are most often going to be your state hospitals for treatment of mental disorders and psychiatric, chronic psychiatric disorders, and outpatient treatment for those same patients usually. But they also treat people that don't get hospitalized. Same thing occurs if it's nonprofit, hospital and or accompanying clinic, or in a for-profit hospital and or accompanying clinic. Okay. People work indirectly in those settings. I just told you about direct, right? So direct practice is working one-on-one. You're sitting face-to-face in a counseling session, or you're doing crisis intervention, or you're, doing case management, versus indirect. Indirect would be an administrator of the agency, whether it's private, for-profit, or an entrepreneurship by a social worker, advanced practitioner who's, set up their own clinic and has somebody, maybe 1 or 2 employees, or maybe 50. That person then is doing administrative work, but also maybe doing, in a small practice like that, might also be doing direct practice. So in other words, they'd have a caseload, but they would not necessarily be having a caseload the size of, say, a partner that might work with them. There's going to be somebody who manages that private practice. That's different than the setting of an agency, whether it's public or private in psychiatric field, okay, or mental health field. I should just be saying mental health field, because that's what we really refer to it as. So the director, the chief physician, if it's a hospital and a psychiatric hospital, or the mental health clinic administrator, or in state offices, like if we think about public agencies, there are public mental health clinics like the Monroe Mental Health Clinic is our public mental health clinic. In policy, by the way, we talk about how public mental health clinics can charge for insurance and also can do private pay. Often will be on a sliding scale, but that's for your policy class to talk about that. So in your field setting, then of mental health, working in a psychiatric hospital or a mental health clinic, outpatient clinic, whatever. What you do can be direct, primarily it's going to be direct on the RSW to the advanced professional, but it can also be indirect. Did I say direct? Direct practice for working face-to-face with somebody as a counselor, right? But it can also have positions, and there are fewer of those, that are indirect. And indirect is when you're doing administration, but you might also be working from any kind of agency on the local level, which Monroe Mental Health Clinic would be, to the state level, which would be the Office of Mental Health in Louisiana, that I think is under the Department of Health and Hospitals. And then there is the federal level. So on any one of those fields, any one of those settings in mental health practice, the field of mental health practice in social work, can be examples where you would perform indirect mental health work. Okay, because you would be setting policy, you would be making sure evaluations are done, that services are being delivered effectively, timely. You would be monitoring or getting reports from someone who is monitoring the billing procedures. You might be testifying in Congress. You may be writing bills. If you were in the federal level, you may be doing the same on the state level. If you are an administrator, you're going to be more than likely in indirect practice by implementing policy, suggesting policy to the authorities who set the laws and rules for how mental health clinics, psychiatric hospitals, how they are expected to be managed. Okay. All right. Now, the reason I did that is because that's going to take us to this. Can y'all see my screen?
Yes, right now.
Okay. All right. Let me enlarge this. All right. Okay. I discovered this morning, getting ready for class, that I kind of messed up. I was going to set it up. I wrote it first as you have an option, but then I didn't write out the second option. Okay. So here's what it is. This is going to be your final exam. You're going to go to the link, which is right here.
Oh, I think you need to share your screen.
Oh, I'm not sure. I thought I was. Okay.
Sorry about that.
No, you don't be sorry. I'm sorry. I'm the one that didn't click on it. Okay. Oh, there we go. Now you can see, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, good. Okay. All right. So, okay, I'm just going to hit the high points right here. If anybody's on chat, you might need to speak up, because I just minimized y'all so y'all could show you this. Okay. Okay. All right. So here's your assignment. Of course, it's going to look different because when you're looking at it, because I've enlarged it so we can see it well. This is your final exam. You will turn it in on the 10th. So you've got, a week to do it. The details are so that you know exactly what you're supposed to do, and hopefully you can follow it like a recipe and get it done. So we're going to go over that now to be sure that that works that way. Okay. So if we go here, see, it did that for me before, so we may have to type it in. You're going to pick a field of practice from this list. Well, I hope this is, it's very weird. It's not. I don't know why it's doing that. That's very weird. It's going to really screw us up. Okay. Ah, okay. Well, this was the sidebar, I guess. The first time I put it up there, and then when I just checked it, it did this just this morning. And it had a really nice setup. So they must have had something go screwy with their stuff, but you can still see here. So you see the primary, you're gonna have to scroll down to the bottom. You see what I'm doing? Yeah, they must have had some kind of real mess up with their. Okay. This right here is what I want you to select. Okay. And those of you who are on today, well, first of all, be able to select which one you want. And I want you to be looking at that and tell me about that in a minute. But let me go back, first of all, to the assignment. Okay. All right. So I want you to go here and look at that careers list and choose one of those. Let's go back to that just for a minute. Let's do military social work just for the heck of it. Okay, there you go. Tells you how to become a military social worker. At least that content's still good. What they tell you what it is, what it does, what's required, basic skills, which look at this: listening, empathy, interpersonal skills, professionalism, awareness of military standards, and professional boundaries for active duty and veterans, clinical mental health skills, diagnosing, evaluating, and treatment, counseling. So what does that sound like? Direct or indirect practice primarily that you're going to be doing?
Correct.
Direct, exactly right. Exactly right. Now, if they said in there that you're going to be doing mainly administration, or you're not, it doesn't use any wordage or verbiage that suggests other than what we're reading, then it would be indirect. But what we're reading is very direct. Exactly. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, Miss Savage. What link is that under again?
Okay. When you go to now, here, let me go ahead and just open it for you so you'll see it in progress. No.
Are you oh, like are you trying to find the careers list?
Are you talking to
Him? Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
talking to-
Yeah.
Yes.
If you're on the resources page, you might have to full screen your page, because like it's at the very bottom. Like
Well, dang it, I can't get back. It was supposed to. Okay. All right. Okay. So let's just go through these instructions before I get too wordy myself. And so, okay. So you have this assignment allows you, let's start there, 2 options. And I was just telling everybody that I wrote it up like that. You're going to open it up. You're going to find a field of practice that you're interested in, pick 2 or 3 initially, and then find one that interests you the most. Okay. And then you're going to go look for some information about it other than the master's online site. This one, right? Let's see, where is it? Right here. You see this? That's where we are. That's where we were. We just clicked on that. But something's messed up with it, because with their page, because it doesn't look like it did when I put it up there. It had a beautiful layout, easy to access stuff. So I don't know what happened, but you can still get the information you need to pick a field of practice. Okay. A field is defined by what it is you're doing. And when we have students go into our other courses, just for the major, we cover policy and other courses that address this, but your field is defined primarily by the people that you serve. What are their needs? Is it mental health? Then it's mental health. If it's working in a school where you're counseling students, making sure they've got environmental needs met, and family needs met, so that they can achieve well in school, that's school social work. Get it? If you're working with child protection, or you're working with daycare, or you're working with Head Start, and there are social workers in all of those, then and I imagine there'll be more if we actually get the legislation being proposed right now on the federal level for universal daycare, which is amazing. You realize what that is, right? Universal daycare. Right now we have universal public education in primary, middle, and secondary schools. What does that mean? Because that's what we're talking about. Something that's universal means everyone has access. Now think about that. I would imagine that the proposals right now for universal daycare, public daycare, is going to be kind of like mental health is set up that I was talking about a while ago. There'll probably be a sliding scale. Right now, in fact, we have families who receive temporary assistance to needy families can access a certain amount of daycare that's part of their benefits on the temporary assistance to needy families program, which is designed to be temporary, by the way. And they don't pay anything, but there are those who can still access daycare through Department of Children and Family Services in Louisiana, but they do it on a sliding scale. So in a way, we kind of have public in that we kind of have public mental health services available to everyone, but it's based on your ability to pay for both fields of practice, mental health or daycare. And I just gave you some examples of child welfare services, and child welfare is a field of practice. When we care about the well-being of children, there are lots of ways we can go about doing that. It's not just child protection. It's not just foster care. It's not just adoption. That's tip of the iceberg, really. Okay. So you're going to pick a field. This is just encouraging you to look at 2 or 3 at least and pick one. Then you're going to find you're going to do a Google search, trying to make this simple, about what that field does and what kind of organizations are associated with it, or whatever you find that you think would be beneficial to you to increase your knowledge about the field you selected. Okay. You're going to put all of this on a PowerPoint. I want it bulleted. I want it brief. I want you to address the components that I'm going to go over next. But before I do, let me finish number 2. So you're going to do a Google search and find at least 1, preferably 2, pieces of information that tell you more about that field of practice you chose to learn more about. Then you're going to do at least 1 academic journal article that relates to an issue or practice in the field. Oh, I'm not editing. Okay. I can't edit and flip back and forth. So let me just tell you this, and hopefully I'll remember. So you're going to find at least 1 academic journal, and usually those are going to be on Google Scholar or through the library, which you can get to Google Scholar through the library online. And it can be an article that has the name of your field in it. It could be like there's the child welfare. It's just named child welfare. That's about welfare of children, right? And so therefore, you're going to find things that have to do with any of those areas that we find in the child welfare field and social work, whether it's public social work to protect children from abuse and neglect, or to help the family stay intact if they need help, to keep their children from being removed or to keep them safe. Or it could be daycare. It could be Head Start. We have social workers in Head Start. We could be in child development programs, centers that are established for providing enhanced activities for children who may be developmentally delayed. So there are lots of ways that we can work within child welfare, and not just by protective services, which we tend to think of child welfare as primarily. So just using that as a field, right? So I might find the journal Child Welfare, and it would have all of those different manifestations of child welfare work. Okay. So in other words, there's lots of ways you can practice child welfare. There's lots of ways you can practice in the field of child welfare. Okay. So there are other journals. You can just type in your the name of your field of practice, school social work, and see what pops up. You're probably going to find all kinds of stuff. You can go with the first one you find and say, this was interesting that the first article popped up was something to do with whatever, you know, they're dealing with in school. It could be conducting IEPs to crisis counseling that we were talking about when we started out today, crisis counseling in a school setting, any number of things like that as examples that you can find. You only have to do one, and the one is for the exercise in looking up journal articles that relate to what we do in social work in specific fields. Okay. So you have, oh, I didn't, see, I had it on there and I went back to fix this and apparently I didn't save. You have, notice right here, it says, if you can. You see that? Everybody?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. You know, the whole class this semester, it's interesting. Maya, you have been our class leader because you keep us on track and make sure we respond, et cetera, if nobody else does. So they've gotten dependent on you. I think everyone else has gotten a bit dependent on you. Okay, so find at least one, oh, we already did that. And then you're going to make these resources, which should not be more than, say, 2, 3, 4 at most. Okay, I want this to be brief. I don't want you to be putting tons of work in it when you've got all your other finals to do. And Lord knows you've struggled with since midterm on with this course, with my situation. So I want to make it as simple as possible, but something still that allows you to sort of integrate what we have been able to cover and basically come away, those of you who are not social work majors, those of you who are, with an idea of some of the things that we do and the types of knowledge. That's what this is. Skills. That's what interviewing someone or exploring what the skill basis is for that field of practice you choose for this assignment. That's option B. So this is option A. And then I'm going to go back and after we have this discussion and fill in option B. And option B will require you don't have to locate a worker, but what you will have to do is summarize what the social worker would do in the field of practice that you chose, okay? Without duplicating the content that's on that website. This is just to inform you of the field, and then for you to use that as a springboard to explore that field, hence the name of the assignment that now is your final. Okay, so you will have option A. If you don't know a social worker, you don't have one convenient to you. Okay, because I know that takes some work too. If you can't find a social worker or you just don't have time to do it, whatever, that's okay. You'll have a second option. And that will be to simply use the literature, use Google searches, look at videos, find things that tell you about those fields of practice.
And if we choose that option, will we make our PowerPoint? So you said that it wants to be brief, so like no more than 4 slides on the PowerPoint. Is that what you meant?
Well, I said anywhere from 1 to no more than 4
4.
slides for the bibliography. Really, you should only have 1 page reference for your references.
Okay. Oh yeah.
Okay. So the entire PowerPoint should certainly be no more than 10 slides, because I want you to bullet it and just talk about it, because that's, no, wait, you got to turn it in. We're not going to talk about it. I already did that. Okay. So yeah, you're going to turn it in on Monday by the end of the day. But you still should be able to put enough content on there without having to do a whole lot of slides. That lets me know that you follow the instructions, you got something out of it, you know something more about the field of practice that you chose.
So basically, yeah, the main topics is like what type of social work that we picked, like what it is,
Right.
what requirements do you have to do in school to get it? Like what does it require out of you? Like personal characteristics, probably why did you pick this one?
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you. Yep. Okay. All right. So whether or not you interview, this is where I realized, oh my God, I got to go back and fix all this, because I said, if you can, I am going to give you the 2 options anyway, but I recognize that most of you probably will use the easier option, which, I would do. So, and you will be graded the same. It'd probably be fewer slides, I would expect, if you did the option A, which would be actually interviewing someone in that field. Unless you know somebody, you're probably not going to have time to do that, honestly. That's why I wanted to say, give you the 2 options, which I set this up to review today is only 1. So, and then I realized, I put if you can. So I was going to give you both options. So, yeah, so it's going to be the same thing. You're going to summarize what the field is about in your own words, in a bulleted, brief fragments. You don't even have to have complete sentences. Just watch your spelling, follow the instructions. Okay. We require students to take technical writing, social work 30/20, not social work, English 30/24, because documentation is the only way we know we've done what we're supposed to, what our job is about. We have no physical evidence other than most typically our documentation. Therefore, our documentation is essential, that we understand what brief means, how to summarize, how to protect confidentiality, in maintenance of records. That's not in the English course, just the writing is. And the reason we've got it in there that I like to tell about is briefly is a colleague of mine who started out as a case manager, got her master's, went into advanced practice, supervised, became an administrator became an administrator of a regional office of now DCFS in Louisiana. And I remember her telling about how someone she was supervising, and it was a kind of a pretty new worker, had been there a couple of years maybe, had a case that she had to go to court for removal. And so the child had been removed from the home because there was imminent risk of harm. And when removed, it required that the worker get what's called an instanter order, or a temporary order for removal of a child until further information can be found, based on the assessment of the CPI worker who had to make that judgment to remove the child. And typically that's the CPI worker always that does that. But then a foster care worker is assigned that case. And once that worker gets that case, they have, 3 days, they have to go before the judge, the foster care worker now, not the CPI worker, though the CPI worker might be called depending on the judge. You'll get that in a minute. So you have 3 days from the day investigator goes out, sees that the home is chaotic, family is drugged out, parents or whatever, and it's an unsafe environment. So they take the kid out of the home. Well, first they call the judge. The judge says, yeah, go ahead, takes them out of the home, puts them in foster care. And that's another whole job in itself, finding the home, somebody that can take them, and getting a worker, a foster care worker at the same time to manage the placement, the temporary placement. Well, with that temporary approval by the judge, within 3 days of removing that child, that case manager has got, not the CPI worker, but the case manager has to go back to court and prove if this child deserved to, or if the child was required or needed for safety reasons to stay in the environment longer for further assessment and possible location of a longer term foster care placement until the parents got treated. So here this worker goes in, she's got this case, she's a foster care worker, she's got to go in and justify to the judge on the 3rd day. And when she goes in, and of course you present your records, they have to document, receive this case, sign to whatever foster parent, etc. And when the judge looked at those notes that the worker took in and presented to the judge, because that's where they start in reviewing a case, the judge looked down and said, I don't know who wrote this, and asked the case manager directly, the foster care manager, case manager, is this your documentation? And she said, yes, sir. And he said, well, you take it back and you come back to me in 2 days and have me something I can read. I can't read your writing. I can't tell what you mean. I don't know. You got words in here I've never heard of and maybe are just misspelled. I don't know, but they look misspelled to me. You need to go clean this up. So what happened? The kid now, who's removed from his parent, which is traumatic enough, imagine somebody comes in your house right now, this very day, or comes to wherever you're sitting right now and says, I'm going to use you, Maya, since you're our outspoken student, and says, Maya, stop what you're doing. Come with me. It's going to be okay. I'm going to explain to you once we get outside of your building. Okay. I'm a worker with the state, and I'm going to help you find someplace safe for you tonight and probably the next 2 days. And it'll be somebody that we've approved of, and it's a safe person, a safe home. Now imagine if that happened to you right now, this very day, as old as you are, and somebody did that to you, how you would feel. I would imagine some anxiety. It might be a crisis for you, as we were talking about when we started. And how can you justify not having a child back in his home as quickly as possible, if possible, when they're in that emotional state? And because this worker had those 2 additional days, this kid, by the time he went through the court process, had been in foster care for a week and ended up going back home. Now imagine having to endure that kind of anxiety, and you're 3 years old or 6 years old, or worse, you're 10 or 11. You understand now, and you have emotional reactions that you didn't have control over at 3 or 5 or even 7 necessarily, you see? So documentation is important. So we have to have documentation to prove what we do. It's the only solid thing basically that we have. And that's why we do 3024, I'm working backwards, and doing this slide presentation, but with a bullet presentation that makes sense and has good spelling. That's all you got to do. And following instructions, documentation and social work practice, no matter the field, no matter if it's private practice, has documentation forms and formats that are required. In the short spell I did private practice in Alabama, did it about a year and a half. You had to follow, even though it was private practice, every insurance company had a different format. Magellan was the worst. It had, it was detailed, and they just wanted the facts, ma'am, or the facts, sir. Okay. So, and you had to dot every I with that, and you had to get it signed off on, even though we could diagnose, you had just to get it signed off on by the psychiatrist, and, all this. Oh man, it was amazing. And every insurance provider has a different format. Only those patients in private practice who are private pay entirely, and have no insurance or no government assistance, only those individuals pay out of pocket, and you use your own documentation, right? But anyway, so you have to be able to follow the instructions or you won't get paid. And I can't tell you how many times in that year and a half even that we had Magellan. Of course, Magellan wasn't our only insurance provider that was reimbursing us. We had tons. And you had to know the format for each one in order to get paid. Medicare, whew, yeah, you definitely got to have that one, your I's dotted and your T's crossed, following their format. And it has to be brief. It has to make sense. And it's got to be done well. You don't have to write creatively in social work. In fact, you should not at all. And factual information is what's required. So that's why you're going to do this in the way that you're going to do it. You're going to do it brief. You're going to do few, it's not more than 10 slides. And it's going to be basically about right here, for you, if you choose your own option, why did you choose that field? What degrees you have to have? Anything special that you learn about in your brief research here, your non-extensive research that I'm asking you to do? Does it require you to have some sort of certification? If you're working in a child advocacy center, for example, you would likely need an additional certification as a forensic interviewer, because you would be dealing with cases of child maltreatment that involve DCFS or the Government Agency for Protecting Children, or it may be a custody issue with divorces between parents or caregivers.
I have a question real quick.
Go ahead.
And you may have already answered this, but if we don't interview somebody in person, do we still have to answer those questions? Like,
Yeah. You would just do it for yourself,
Okay.
as if you were considering that, or you just wanted to know more about that field.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. And that's what I was trying to get to. And I thought I had it here, but apparently I skipped out and didn't save it. Anyway, so I'm going to give you two options. And yeah, you'll be answering all of that for the field that you choose. Okay.
I also have a question.
Okay.
When we pick our journal for our bibliography, so that has to be based. So our area of social work is based. It'll be based on a real event. Like, say for example, mine was child social worker, which means they'll probably be involved in child welfare. So we'll need to find a journal that happened, like where maybe a family was going through a big ordeal and the child was probably the victim, how child welfare came into that, and how they managed to help it, or at least try. And then, so like, just include that in the PowerPoint like that.
Yes. I'm going to give you an example. That's exactly right.
Okay.
Okay, so let's do, I got child welfare. Run by me that last part, Maya. The scenario that you think you might be dealing with.
Well, let's see. It just came off the top of my head that a family might be going through an ordeal. Maybe one or both the parents may be the victims of substance abuse, and
Okay.
yeah, and because it does happen, and then that can have a big ordeal on the child, because that might lead to abuse, neglect, or probably a bad influence on them that they might get to have a bad way with substance abuse in the future as well. Yeah, but even though that's not written in stone.
Okay, so we're going to do social work with, and let's just do it broad like that. Okay, let's stay away from child welfare right now. Okay, and so we're going to do social work with children, and so social work with children and substance abusing parents. So let's just see what happens. I'm going to have to put my credentials in. Okay, so let's see what pops up. Pretty sure something's going to. There you go. A new preventive intervention for children of substance abusing parents, results of a randomized controlled trial. Of course, that's going to be a research article because it's got randomized controlled trial there, right? So you might say, I don't want to read a research article. Motivational interviewing. This is the trend. It's one of the newer evidence-based, which is a term we use in medicine and all types of fields that are in some capacity providing services to human beings. Okay, so for us, if we were counseling children who are involved with substance abusing parents, we might use this because the evidence or the research has supported over time and validated research, because it's published in an academic journal, that it is proven to work. So that's what evidence-based in the social work education and in practice is called evidence-based, because it actually makes a difference in the work that you do for improving or stabilizing a situation like, a child welfare case and substance abusing parents. So motivational interviewing, because I know that I would find that interesting. But if you just were interested in, well, what can you do? How do you treat people? Well, this is going to tell you this word right here, intervention. Okay. Accessing substance abuse treatment. Okay. And almost all of these are dealing with child welfare. But that's not necessarily the case. You could have a mental health case where, the child's going into therapy and you find out that the parents have one or more, or both parents have some kind of substance abuse going on. Maybe there's alcoholism, that you've got a functional alcoholic that's disrupting the family. You might not know that. And if that were the case and the child has not been physically harmed to necessitate and to require you to report it, what you're looking for is imminent risk of harm. You have to have a good reason to know that a child, by physical appearance, is what we talk about in child abuse class, by their physical appearance, by the way the parents interact with the kid, if they act normal, which they might, I don't know. So, you might refer it automatically, but if you don't see any evidence of risk to the life of the child, now two parents who are substance abusing and you never see them and that's why they're referred, is a different story, right? That would be an imminent risk of harm to the child. Okay, so evidence-based, there you go, drug treatment practice in the child welfare system. Example of methadone. Substance-dependent women becoming mothers, breaking the cycle of adverse childhood experiences. That'd be interesting to me. Then you've got child and family social work as the journal. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
Child abuse review. But I'm going to tell you that's going to deal with, it's going to have lots of fields of practice involved in that. Here it says social work. You see, so you look down here for subjects to know if this one would actually tell you anything about social work dealing with this in this article. Because this journal, because of my length of time doing this, I know this journal, Child Abuse Review, is one that I know you're going to find social work in. Okay. But look here at this one, the role of spirituality in the recovery process. It's in child welfare. Child welfare, I was telling y'all earlier, I mentioned it, if you were with me. Child welfare is really about all kinds of child welfare. It's not just about public child welfare, child protection, foster care, adoption, case management, family preservation, things that are done in the state-run agency that we call in Louisiana Department of Children and Family Services, right? This could be in any aspect. So you look here and you see social services, child care, children, substance abuse treatment. You don't see social work anywhere there, right? So I'd probably skip it. Not that you wouldn't find it interesting, but you're looking also for social work. That's the assignment. That's the point of the assignment, is to see, for me, what you were able to get from the course. And second, to give you an opportunity for more points that you can earn toward your grade, because the less points you have toward a grade, the more difficult they tend to be. So I didn't want to do that to you. And of course here, can't be more blatant than the journal article name itself. You see that right there? That's the journal article name. Up here, journal article name, italics. It shows up in bold here though, because it's part of our search words, our search terms, okay? So this one's child and adolescent social work. So you're going to find several types of child welfare practice, not just child protection, not just public child welfare. Okay, so does that kind of help? Oh, family drug courts in child welfare. It's interesting to me. Co-location. If you were Journal of Social Work Practice in the addictions, that would be a good one. Now remember, you only need like one of these, but I would suggest you at least scroll through, as I'm doing now, and find one that says, okay, this interests me. Doesn't have social work in but it's a social work journal. So we're going to have social workers contributing to it. Oh, it's from Norway, but they have American authors that go there, right there. Okay. Challenging parents who themselves have substance abuse disorders, childhood experiences. Parents have childhood experiences with substance abusing parents themselves. They replicate behavior. Okay. This is a research article, purposeful sampling, and also is what we would consider purposeful sampling is part of qualitative method of social work, or a qualitative method of research, period. Any kind of research, not just in human service fields or social work, but also, or nursing. They do qualitative as well, as do psychiatrists and others, psychologists, so on. So, you know, I might be interested in that because I know it's going to be primarily about how substance abusing parents themselves had possibly substance abusing experiences during their childhood, and the potential for reading about possible replication of behaviors and how they go about that. This could be very informative if I was interested in how can I work with a mother that's, you know, receiving services from me, and, you know, she's been a substance abuser, may still be, and I come to find out she's had personal experiences too. What do they find in this article, you know? And then there's the whole article. You don't necessarily have to print it out, or you can, if you get lucky and have a, what do they call this?
PDF file?
PDF. Yeah, well, you can get a PDF file of a hard copy, but this is the HTML, I think, version. Is that what they call it? I don't know. I'm a digital immigrant. I tell y'all that. I ain't gonna have to worry about it very long. Okay. All right. So there's that exercise. So you know what you're looking for. Okay. Any other questions about it? and what we're doing here.
Okay, so I joined the meeting late because well, A, I didn't know there was a meeting today until I woke up. And B, I was having trouble like getting a link to the meeting that actually worked.
Oh,
And this is Ramon Williams. He's a friend of mine. He's also in this
hey,
class.
Ramon. Hey. Okay. Did you have the same problems, Ramon?
Yes, he did.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh,
So I
my.
came to my friend's door this morning because it didn't work on my phone.
And
Okay.
the one that did work, it's not the one that was like in the message, but the one that was actually like in the unit for class participation and attendance. That was the one that worked.
Oh.
It was very weird.
Mm-hmm.
Could
Well,
you
I sent it the way. Go ahead.
could you just go over the like the start of it, because that was all that we really missed. Oh, and well, I actually had a question. Will you be like posting this, or is this just for people that were here?
No, you good. This is for all of y'all. Where we are, let's just give you a brief rundown.
Okay.
Is we're going over the final
Mhm.
assignment that serves as your project. Okay. We are going to, and this is something that was not covered to begin with. So you're all on the page for this, because we actually started out with some chit chat till more people got on. The points will be determined for your grade will be based on 500 points. Okay. And of those 500 points, you have attendance points. That's by your signing in, signing out primarily, because we started that at the beginning of March, I believe. And then your participation points, where I just look at the primary things you expect, like the required stuff. If it's never been looked at, that's not going to get you any points. So there are 4 of those. Each of those were worth 25 points. This is on the syllabus. You had 2 quizzes. You really only had 1, but I am going to go ahead and count that as 100 points because some of you redid the quiz. I'm not sure how that happened, but that was just a weird glitch on my part. And then you were supposed to have 2 exams. We cut those out. You had a field of practice exercise and exploring resources exercise that we took both of those out. So we're going to count your final assignment, which is what we're discussing now and what this is, as your final exam. Okay. It's worth 200 points so that I can increase those points available for you to base your grade upon. So that's where your grades will come from. Extra credit's extra credit. There will be some extra credit built into this assignment that I was actually working on before I went back and realized I had to fix it. The reason why, in case you missed this, is that I wrote originally, if you can. That means that you have an option. However, I didn't finish it as an option. So I went, oh my God. So today, early this morning, I started tinkering with it to get it fixed and then didn't save it to be able to access it. So I'm going to go ahead and open it now so you can see it, but you'll be seeing it in real time and I will notify you when it's absolutely finished. In fact, I'll write on there, completed. Okay. So you can read it, you can see it, you can go ahead and get started on it, but it will not be completed until you see completed on the link and on the announcement and on the email. Okay. Wait.
All right.
Okay then.
All right.
Baba Boogie.
Okay.
All right. So I think that's pretty much it. That's all we got.
So
We had a discussion about crisis intervention and when you use crises and all that, but that, they're in that discussion. I sort of wrapped it around an example of mental health as a place, as a field of practice. So, I mean, I am going to post this recording. So if you wanted to look at that before you finished up or review, what we talked about, but what I just told you is probably the essence of what you need.
All right. Thank you very much.
thank you, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Okay. Any other questions?
Will you be counting us as here since that we were unable to log in due to some
At the very
issues?
least, we'll be late.
Okay. Zach and Ramon. Okay. Anybody else get on late because of difficulties with the site?
Okay, someone else did.
All right, so there it is. There's the, let me,
One,
well,
three.
there it is. It'll look different because I've enlarged it for the class. Okay, so when you see it, it'll look a little neater. But I did this so y'all could see it. So this is what I was reviewing right here. It is, don't do it till you see completed. Got it. Good, Ramon. Okay. All right. So I am going to complete it as soon as I get off with y'all. And you should be able to do it. The instructions may look daunting, but it's because I want you to follow the instructions specifically, as I was talking about. If you were on then, Zach and Ramon, I was telling everyone that documentation is how we show what we do, because we don't have something concrete necessarily except our documentation. So we live by the rule: if it's not documented, it's not done. And I gave an example of a case where a worker didn't do well, and the judge said, leave my courthouse, caused a kid to stay in foster care longer than he needed to. So there are ramifications for not documenting. And that's just one in my experience, you know. So following the instructions for documentation is important too in what we do. Okay. So if you follow the step by step, and sadly, that's a little bit of leftover from grant writing I did for couple of decades actually. And all grants are just so detailed. But actually, if you just go line by line by line, they're easy to do and need to get funded, because that's what they look for. They look for you following the instructions, and then you got to have the content, of course, but you have to follow their instructions in presenting your content and why you want money, right? So documentation, very important. Following instructions, very important. Okay. All right. So these dates, you do not have a final. Let's just get rid of that right now. That's finals week. It'll be your final assignment.
When we're doing our PowerPoint, and don't worry, yeah, like I'm not going to do it yet until it says complete on the social work, but I mean, I will be thinking about it and like and how to put it into the PowerPoint. When we answer these questions, like, can we just like make those into the PowerPoint? So like, for example, one of these is that why is this social work special to you? Can we just like answer that saying like answer that with our bibliography, saying like, I like this social work practice because I read this bibliography and it got me interested and wanted to learn more about this area of social work.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, you can do that.
And then of course, and also about the bibliography, when we talk about it in the PowerPoint, and I know that the website that the journal is on will be in our resources at the end, but when we talk about it, do you want us to like just like have like a short summary about what happened in the bibliography? Because I'm pretty sure you don't want us to have it word for word, just explain what happened, how social work came in.
Right.
Okay.
None of this should be word for word. This should be your interpretation of the information you get, whether it's by an interview or whether it's by using literature.
Okay.
None of it should be your actual citations. I'm not asking you for citations. I do want a reference so you show where you got your work. Mm-hmm. But I just want you to bullet the main points that you get and word in your own language to reflect an understanding of what it is that you now know from doing this assignment about that field.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And if like and of course that while I'm doing it, not now, but eventually when I'm doing it, if I ever need feedback, then I can always just show you what I have, and then I can just have feedback.
All right. Yeah, that sounds good. Sounds good. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All righty. Well, if there aren't any other questions, be sure you sign out. Okay. Y'all have a good day.
You too. Thank you.
Mhm.